All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. In the latest round of James Harden being disgruntled, he has now turned his anger towards Philadelphia 76ers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey. During an Adidas media event in China, Harden called Daryl Morey a liar and said that he would never be a part of any organization that Morey is part of. Following this past NBA season, Harden was seeking for the Sixers to trade him to the Los Angeles Clippers. But last week, those trade conversations ended as the asking price for the All Star guard appears to be too high. Now, back in June, Harden did pick up his player option for the upcoming season at more than $35 million. But apparently, he is upset with Morey and the Sixers for A, not giving him a long term extension or trading him. And with Harden currently an unhappy camper in Philadelphia, we basically know what is going to come next. We've seen James Harden complain his way out of Houston with the Rockets. We saw the same act in Brooklyn with the Nets. And now Harden has brought that show to Philadelphia, as at the end of the day, a leopard never changes its spots. So honestly, with training camp probably set to start in about 6 weeks or so around the NBA, break out the fat suit and the lethargic attitude for Harden when the Sixers do open camp. Now, I'll say this: if Morey gave Harden his word that he was either A, going to trade him or give him the long term deal, and none of that happened, obviously James Harden does have a right to be upset. But I will say this: given James Harden's track record and given his track record with Daryl Morey as well, it's kind of, iffy for James Harden to be the way that he is. And I say this because you go back to Daryl Morey's time with James Harden and Houston with the Rockets. Daryl Morey moved heaven and earth to get James Harden from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He also moved heaven and earth to put a championship team around James Harden. And whether it was Houston, here in Philadelphia, or sandwiched in between with Brooklyn, Harden has been the guy who has always failed to deliver. And that's something that is going to, that's his reputation is following him around basketball right now. You think about it in Houston alone with the talent that he had, it went to Brooklyn, the same thing. And now in Philadelphia, you had Mike D'Antoni as your head coach, a guy who basically gave the keys to his offense to you. He put you at the point guard position and he let you, do you. And it still didn't work. Previously to that, you had Kevin McHale and y'all got to the Western Conference Finals. But you look at the talent that James Harden's played with: Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook twice, Joel Embiid, Trevor Ariza, Clint Capella, PJ Tucker, Kevin Durant twice, Kyrie Irving. For me, money aside, how much help can James Harden get and still not get it done? And it's not just about not getting it done, it's about packing up and folding up shop in those key moments. You go back to last year's playoffs in the second round when the Sixers were eliminated by the Boston Celtics. They were up 3-2 in that series, had an opportunity to clinch on their home court in game six. James Harden didn't show up. Then you go to game seven in Boston. It was like James Harden was just there physically, but he didn't do anything. And honestly, if that was a case where somebody had said, well, James Harden might have been on the take, obviously, a lot of people would have believed that sentiment. But nonetheless, the Sixers, they've been down this road before because we saw this issue with Ben Simmons becoming an unhappy camper several years ago. And of course, it spilled over into training camp. And then the 76ers had no choice but to trade the disgruntled star. I think they are going down this same road right now with James Harden because there's only the only thing that could keep James Harden in Philadelphia now is if Daryl Morey and the 76ers give him a contract extension. And with that contract extension, they're going to have to give him $200 million. I look at it like this: James Harden's 34. He's going to be 34 years of age in a couple of weeks. Obviously, he's about to be on that backside of his NBA career. And it's just a matter of how much do you want to commit to that guy. I do feel that even with his track record, there are some teams out there that would be interested in James Harden. There are just several problems. Number one, the 76ers asking price in return is going to be too high. And then on top of that, I don't see a team giving up the assets to get James Harden and then having to turn around and pay him as well. I think teams would do one or the other, but not both. So you look at this scenario right now, both sides do have leverage. James Harden has the leverage, and you know what he's going to do. He is going to, be the unhappy camper to get himself out of town. Obviously, Daryl Morey has leverage as well, but we've been down this road before with the 76ers, like I said. And if you're Philly, you also have to factor in Joel Embiid because guess what? You have a scenario where this big man, he is the current MVP of the NBA. But then on top of that, you have a window around him where you can say, you know what? Let's go out there and put this championship team together. And the Sixers have been there in the last couple of years and they've been unable to get it done. You also have a scenario if you're Philadelphia, you're bringing in a new head coach in Nick Nurse to try to get you over that championship hump. And if you're Nick Nurse, obviously you want to work with James Harden, but you don't want to work with a disgruntled James Harden, which is going to, put your program that you're trying to install, further behind than what it needs to be. So I really do think that Daryl Morey and James Harden need to iron this out. There is a possibility that they can iron it out, but it's going to take a lot of dollars and cents, and it might take more dollars and cents than Daryl Morey was initially willing to give James Harden in order to keep him in Philadelphia. It's one of those where obviously Daryl Morey is hell bent on getting his perceived value back for James Harden. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, it's one of those where how active of a seller are Daryl Morey and the 76ers going to be to go out there and trade James Harden? Because obviously, if he doesn't get his long term deal, teams around the league know that, you know what, the leverage would shift to James Harden at that point, and they might get him slightly cheaper than what the Sixers initially wanted. We saw this happen with Ben Simmons, and of course, it created an issue, and it's going to create an issue here because once training camp starts and James Harden comes in, it's going to be a question that's going to be asked to just about everybody on this team: Daryl Morey, Nick Nurse, Joel Embiid, and right down the list of the players. Honestly, at the end of the day, you're probably not going to get everything that you want for James Harden in return if you're the 76ers, but you have to look at it like this. You got to try to, put something around Joel Embiid. I obviously get that because you still, are in championship contention. But at the same time, you know what? You don't need an unhappy camper on your team if that's the case. If the Sixers do decide to move on from James Harden, it would be his fourth different NBA team in the last 4 years. And this is why I'm not going to give him a pass on this because, again, Daryl Morey has basically done everything that James Harden has wanted him to do up until this point. Obviously, money changes things, but nonetheless, if you're James Harden at some point, you got to look in the mirror and ask yourself, is it me? I look at it right now. The Sixers are going down a bad street with this scenario. Again, like I said, you got an opportunity. Try to cut bait so this does not carry over into the season. At the end of the day, this is just, more fodder, if you will, on James Harden's legacy. He's going to be remembered as one of the greatest scorers of this era. He's going to be remembered as one of the greatest ISO players in NBA history. But he's always going to be remembered as well as a guy who couldn't get it done in those clutch moments, along with the fact that, you know what, he was never always happy. And he always had to try to find a way to get his way out of town when things went bad. So at the end of the day, nobody should be surprised at what's going down with James Harden. We saw this before with multiple NBA teams. And like I said, a leopard doesn't change its spots. It's just unfortunate that it had to come to this for Harden and the Sixers. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.